This is the plaintiff, Richard Fern. He says he bought a French bulldog from the defendant, and when he got it home, he discovered it had a urinary tract infection and parvo to boot. The vet told him to take the dog to the animal hospital immediately or it could die, so he did. The defendant's been nothing but a belligerent woman who refuses to take responsibility for selling him a sickly pup, and he's suing her here and now for the $2,208.50 he's owed in vet bills. This is the defendant, Nicole. She says she doesn't believe she's responsible for the vet bills because the dog was checked out and given a clean bill of health before the plaintiff bought him. She's a good breeder. None of the other dogs in the litter were sick, and anything that dog contracted after the sale is simply not her responsibility. She's accused of pooping out on a puppy.
All parties, please raise your right hands.
Welcome back to the People's Court. Next case in the docket, the plaintiff bought a bulldog from the defendant and it tested positive for a urinary tract infection, also parvo. But the defendant says the dog was fine when he left her care. It's the case of the pee pup.
Litigants have been sworn, Your Honor.
Thank you, Douglas.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Okay. Richard Fern?
Yes.
You are suing the defendant from whom you bought a French bulldog for $2,208.50 in vet bills that you incurred that you say are because of how she sold you the dog. The dog
Correct.
came with these problems. Tell me what happened.
On November 9th, I picked up the puppy, purchased the puppy from the defendant, took the dog home, and upon getting the dog home, we were having trouble having the dog feed and eating.
What's the dog's name?
Pepper.
Do you have a picture?
Yes.
Okay. And how old was Pepper when you brought Pepper home?
7 weeks.
Oh my goodness. That is the cutest dog I've ever seen. And I'm not a bulldog fan. I think it's the pose that she's striking. All right, so.
I have to mention, I have to give credit. The defendant did take that picture, and it is a great picture.
That's just a fabulous picture. That's amazing. All right. So you bring her home, and what's the problem?
The puppy wasn't eating, and she was. So we took her to the vet the following day. Because we also, according to the terms of the contract, we had a couple of days to have the pet checked out for health, general health.
Now, I assume you had the pet checked out.
Yes.
Okay. And when had you had the pet checked out?
The week prior to sale.
Okay. So go ahead.
So basically, we were mentioning to the vet that, the puppy's not eating, trouble urinating. And they mentioned that it just might be the new surroundings for the puppy, taken away from its litter.
How old was the puppy at the time of this?
7 weeks.
7 weeks. Okay, so go ahead.
All right. So we left that day on Saturday, November 10th. We ended up trying to, for the next couple of days, it started to get worse, the eating, not eating. And by Tuesday the 13th, it became apparent that she had trouble urinating. She was diarrhea became more constant, and she was vomiting. And then so later that day, on Tuesday the 13th, we brought the dog into the vet. And basically, they told us the dog had parvo, coccidia, and urinary tract infection. And the dog was very lethargic at this time. It was in the evening, and they said if we don't get the dog to the veterinary hospital, the dog was going to die. And she was put into isolation because she tested for parvo. She had to be given IV fluids and put on a specific treatment to cure her.
How much did you end up paying the hospital?
$2,208.
Okay. Can I see the paperwork from the vet visit? How many puppies were in this litter?
There were 5 born, only 4 survived.
What was the purchase price?
$2,500.
Did you get a call from, I never get anything but the answer no to this question from this side of the table, but did you get a call from any of the other pet owners to tell you that you sold this litter to tell you that their dogs were sick?
I have a copy of every purchaser from this litter stating that their dog is healthy and registered with AKC.
Let me see. What's the diagnosis? The dog has parvo?
No, it ends up, it tested faint for parvo, but
Faint positive for parvo. I don't even know what that means. Just a little bit of parvo?
Yes.
Like a little bit pregnant. I mean, you either have, what does it mean?
That's just their term, I guess.
I know,
Yeah.
but did you ever ask them, what does that mean, faint parvo?
They said it could have been of a previous vaccine
vaccine.
that she was giving her.
Right.
But the treatment would have been the same for the urinary tract infection. And
So what did the dog
coccidia.
have? A urinary tract infection?
Yes, and
so
coccidia.
really, this isn't a parvo case. It's the dog had a urinary tract infection that was causing the vomiting
And coccidia.
and coccidia.
Okay. Yes.
So when you find this out and you get that hefty bill, I assume that you call her
Yes.
and you say to her,
I explained, can you help me out with this? And she says, absolutely not. You purchased the puppy. How do I know that you didn't give it to the dog? And I was like, I didn't. I mean, the dog went in our house. There was no other dogs.
the timing of this is kind of critical in a situation like this. Do you have other pets?
No, I don't.
All right. Were you walking the dog?
No.
You didn't walk the dog?
Well, in our backyard, but take it out to urinate and to void.
Okay. Any other pets share your backyard?
No.
Is your backyard fenced?
No.
So the bottom line is coccidia,
Yes.
and
Urinary
which is a
tract-
parasite, right?
Yes.
And what else?
Urinary tract infection.
And a urinary tract infection. And this is not your vet, this is the hospital. The dog is unfit for sale?
Correct.
Okay. And that's important because New York law says that if within certain days, which he's within those days, the vet certifies that the animal was unfit for purchase, then there are certain remedies that he has, none of which, according to him, you afforded him. He says he called you and he wanted you to pay the vet bills or help him with the vet bills, and you said no.
I understand, that the dog was very sick, but I also have documentation that no other dog in that litter had any virus or any disease. Coccidia, you will test positive for 2 days after exposure. He had the dog for 5. There are a number of factors, I think. I treat the dogs all the same from the time they're 4 weeks old. They're wormed. They get a regimen called Albond for 7 to 10 days. That's for coccidia. And they also have a vaccination prior to leaving. That is my regimen.
I got to tell you, I'm kind of surprised that the vet wrote unfit for purchase. There's all kinds of things, and the reason why is because there's all kinds of things discussed, but then not conclusive. Oh, I think I hear a heart murmur, but that's really not it either. You haven't even talked about it because there is no heart murmur.
Correct.
And it could be this, but it's not this. And then, so what we all end up with then is the urinary tract infection and coccidia.
Correct.
All right. And have you brought the dog back since?
To the hospital? No.
Yeah, anyway, to the doctor, to the
dog's
vet.
fine.
To the,
He's fine. Yeah.
He's fine. Okay, I'm glad to hear the dog's fine. So then what did you do? What other discussions did you have?
That day, I asked Mr. Fern if, I asked him to break the dog back to my vet, and, we would figure things out and see if the dog actually, has parvo.
You told him to remove the dog out of the hospital.
Yes.
And take it to your vet.
Right.
Did she tell you, I want to get your dog to my vet?
Yes, but at the same time, she was also talking to the veterinarian. I said, please talk to the vets. Let them, I asked her to have her vet call the hospital and let them work it out. If they tell me, if the vet at my hospital tells me to bring the dog to him, I will.
So it's important because according to the breeder law, you're supposed to have an opportunity to be able to take the dog to a vet of your choosing. You're supposed to provide that opportunity. And is this a contract you still use?
Yes.
Yeah, well, you shouldn't, because in here, one of the things that you tell the consumer, and this is a blatant lie, you must return the defected puppy to us to be compensated. That's not true. That's not what the law requires. They can keep the puppy, which is what everybody wants to do. Nobody ever wants to return the puppy. This is deliberately intended to have people not bother you about being compensated.
I've never had an issue before with.
Well, I'm giving you an issue. I'm telling you now that you have an issue. This does not comply with New York law. New York law requires you to state the truth about what the remedies are. This isn't the truth about what they're. You know that, right?
No, I am not aware of that. I took that off the internet.
Wait, you're the one showing this to me.
No, ma'am.
Right, but I mean, you know because you read what you showed me, right?
Yes, but
and you know that they don't have to quote return the defected puppy to be compensated.
I took that directly off of the internet in 2006.
Okay, you need to get your legal advice somewhere other than the internet.
Okay, but that wasn't legal advice. It actually came off of the internet for dogs being sold under New York state law.
No, it didn't.
Yes, it did in 2006.
No, this came off some internet site that is not the New York state law.
Okay.
Right? Because I have to tell you, this is a false statement. Court's in recess.
How long does it take for these symptoms to manifest?
At least a few days, probably more.
Think a few days, that's it?
No, sometimes it can take a lot longer depending on what the actual case is.
Fair enough. Going inside the courtroom.
Let's see.
I'll tell you, this was a tough one. This was a tough one. All right, let's go over several things. Step one is to determine if the New York state dog protection law applies to you. For you to have the special rights under this statute, it says that you have to afford her an opportunity to have her vet see the dog. And if she asserts that right, then you got to make it happen. You can't just blow her off for the next 10 days and then not worry about it. But what does that do? What that does is unclear, because the law doesn't say, and if you do this, goodbye, go home. What the law says is, and nothing in this law shall deprive you of the opportunity to sue under regular old UCC, governing goods, Uniform Commercial Code, contracts law, any other remedy that you might have. So what we have is regular old contracts law. He buys something from you, and that something has a problem, and is the problem thanks to his fault, or is it thanks to you fault? Did it happen under your watch, or did it happen under his watch? So what's the one thing that I can look at when I'm trying to discern this evidence and get to the bottom of it? That's the incubation period. How long did it take for this to manifest itself? You had mentioned earlier in the trial that that takes 2 days. The smallest amount of time that I have found any authority saying that it'll take to manifest symptoms, the smallest is 6 days. Most every authority that I read talks about 13, 14 days. Okay.
Coccidia,
Yeah.
his veterinarian told me herself it takes 2 to 3 days. His veterinarian.
Okay, you can say that, but
Okay.
I don't see that anywhere.
I see.
And obviously, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I actually, during the break, I had my staff come and ask you, do you have something to buttress that? And the answer was no, that you
Well-
haven't seen that literature anywhere. Because all the literature I'm looking at says that it takes longer than he had the dog. And that's why that's relevant, because if he has the dog on day 3 and the symptoms are coming out, then the dog didn't get it while under his care. The dog had to have gotten it somewhere else. Now, it is very relevant and interesting that none of these other dogs had it. But one of the things that I'm reading about this is that the way the dog gets it, it's by eating its mother's feces. Some of the dogs might have it, carry it, and not get sick. And then some of the dogs may actually get sick, especially if they're in a stressful situation, such as a new home. This has been tough. It was tough for me, but I think that based on what I have, what's in front of me, and I do not have in front of me anybody saying that it happens in 24 hours or 48 hours, and no authority saying that. Based on what is in front of me, I am going to rule in favor of the plaintiff in this case, and because there's just no way that dog could have shown the symptoms of that infectious disease that quickly under his care. It has to have been received beforehand. That's just the way it is. So I'm finding in favor of the plaintiff in the entire amount, which was $2,208.50. Verdict for the plaintiff. Good luck, folks.
Thank you.
The plaintiff has won the case here. Come on in here as the defendant with, what do you think of this outcome? You didn't see this coming, right?
No, I wasn't prepared for this, unfortunately.
What?
Well,
Exactly.
we went in thinking that the dog had parvo, and this turned into a coccidia issue with no test results, no lab results indicating that this dog is actually positive for this virus.
How do you prevent this from happening again?
Oh, nobody in my litter has it, so or in my kennel.
Yeah.
It happened on his establishment.
Right. That's what you say, right this way. And that gives us the plaintiff coming out here on the winning end, a big smile on his face. What are you thinking here?
I'd just like to thank the court for taking the case and seeing it through, and hopefully, thankfully that they saw it my way.
Well, what have you learned about dogs, dealing with dogs?
I mean, it can happen to anybody, and I don't fully blame her for what happened. I just think she could have handled it better in a more professional way when I was trying to get it resolved with her, and not her being belligerent.
Might not have been here then,
Yes.
right? Harvey?
Key here, do your research before going to court when you have something like this. Find out how long the incubation period is. It will absolutely affect your case, and if you don't have an answer, you're probably a goner.